Israeli forces have carried out at least 8 strikes on humanitarian workers, convoys and premises in Gaza since October, even after their coordinates were shared with the Israeli authorities. That's according to Human Rights Watch. The report also finds that the Israelis didn't issue any advance warnings. The latest casualty is a United Nations staff member killed in eastern Rafah. This is the first international UN casualty, with more than 190 Palestinian UN workers killed since October the 7th. Our correspondent Stefanie Dekker joins us from the Jordanian capital, Amman, since Benjamin Netanyahu's government shut down Al Jazeera in Israel. So, Stefanie, when Israel killed 7 aid workers last month and angered the U.S. president, they apologized and they said that they were going to set up a new process to avoid a repeat event. And yet here we are again with Israel targeting and killing aid workers.
Yes, the army, the only sort of official reaction we've had, has said that they were in an area of active combat and that they're looking into the incident. They're investigating the incident. But the UN has incredibly strict security protocol when they operate, even when it's not a hostile environment, Cyril. I mean, even just moving around when things are business as usual in Gaza, even the occupied West Bank. So they have a very strict deconfliction information giving to Israel. And certainly, again, like, I don't know what else can be done, because what they do is they give the coordinates of their locations in terms of, hospitals, schools, headquarters, and then they also very much give the information when it comes to a moving convoy. So there's been a lot of pressure on Israel to do more, but when it does happen, at some point, sometimes there may be an apology, but there's never any accountability. So, it's just a reality that is ongoing. And as many Palestinians will tell you, of course, there's more international spotlight usually when it's an international that gets killed at the hands of Israel. But Palestinian aid workers, as you mentioned there, get killed on a daily basis. This has been the most deadly conflict for UN staff and for aid workers in modern history. So it just gives you a sense of just, the question mark is how do you prevent it from happening? It seems certainly under Israeli modus operandi, impossible.
Stefanie, if I can get your reporting on something completely different now. It's related. It's obviously about Gaza. Israeli settlers have been attacking aid convoys that are bound for the Gaza Strip. What do you know about that?
Yes, well, these are convoys that are leaving Jordan, leaving from here, and they cross the occupied West Bank. And it's been many events, really, over the last couple of weeks and months. They've intensified recently. Last night, the latest, I'm not sure if you're playing a video, but you can see settlers. These are sort of far right-wing, ultra-nationalist in their ideology. So they're taking off the bags, they're throwing them around. You even have small kids doing the same thing. And nothing is being prevented. This is the extraordinary thing, Cyril. Like, the Israeli police, the Israeli security forces, the Israeli border police, the Israeli army, you name it, is not doing anything. They could very easily be accompanying these convoys through the occupied West Bank and getting them to Gaza. Now, it's breaching international condemnation. The U.S. National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, yesterday basically saying this total outrage that people are attacking and looting these convoys, that they are talking to the Israeli government at the highest levels, that they're looking at what measures they can use to stop this. Jordan has condemned it and saying that it's Israel's duty legally as an occupying power to ensure aid gets to Gaza. But politically, the head of the police force, the National Security Advisor, is Itamar Ben-Gvir, the right-wing minister who has the same ideology as those attacking the convoy. They believe that no aid should be going to Gaza, not to Hamas, not to civilians. They see them as par and par the same. So, of course, there's a lot of criticism that Israel can do more, and it's simply not doing that.
All right, Stefanie Dekker reporting from Amman, Jordan, because once again, the Israeli government has shut down Al Jazeera within Israel. Thank you very much, Stefanie. Let's bring in Mohammed El-Masri, a political analyst, professor of media studies at the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies. Mohammed, to be honest, regardless of one's position on the conflict, it is hard to watch the footage that we just saw, right? All our reporting is that aid is so desperately needed inside the Gaza Strip, and there has been almost no food, no water, no fuel going in for a week. And now the footage we just showed, we're seeing settlers that are being allowed by Israeli authorities to just throw the aid on the ground when it's within meters or kilometers of Gaza.
Right. Well, People like Ilan Pape, Gideon Levy, and other Israeli scholars and journalists have talked about a type of bloodlust that exists right now among a significant contingent within Israeli society, and those people don't want aid to go in, as Stefanie was reporting. In fact, when they've done these sort of man-on-the-street interviews, some of the Israelis are very open in saying that they don't want aid even to reach children. They're saying that these children will grow up to be terrorists, and some of them have said we should have killed the children back in 2014 when we had the opportunity, because those kids are now terrorists. So this is the attitude that I think everyone has to realize that we're dealing with. Now, it's interesting, and I don't want to be reductionist about it, but so much of this comes back to the United States.
Why?
Well, because the United States is the one international power, the entity that can stop all of this, as we've said on numerous occasions. And they're not even acknowledging that Israel is committing a war crime with the prevention of aid. They released this memo a few days ago. It's littered with contradictions. On the one hand, they're saying Israel doesn't seem to be doing all that it can to allow aid in. On the other hand, they're saying that there's no evidence of a war crime, that Israel is actually actively preventing aid from going in. And we have to remember here, there is an international consensus here among experts that Israel is committing a war crime by actively preventing aid from getting into the Strip.
And there's some pretty glaring and major blind spots in the U.S.'s messaging. On the one hand, they'll say, for instance, a couple days ago, they were saying, well, the U.S. president was on the phone with Benjamin Netanyahu, and he got some kind of assurance that the border crossing of Karim Abu Salem would be reopened because the Israelis had closed it, right? And now we're seeing, no. For a week, nothing's been going in. The White House messaging, we got the assurance this would be reopened. The fact is, no.
Right. Well, the assumption is always that the U.S. exerts pressure on Israel. That's been the historical assumption. But the reality is what we're seeing is that it's Israel that exerts pressure on the United States and forces the U.S.'s hand. The U.S.
How is that even possible? I mean, the mismatch of power, is obviously in the U.S.'s favor.
Well, it's fascinating. John Mearsheimer, political scientist from the University of Chicago, says that this relationship between the United States and Israel is unlike anything that we've ever had in the history of political relations, right? It's a very extraordinarily special relationship, and it's one where Israel can exert power over the United States. Number one, because the U.S. long ago decided to marry itself to Israel, to sort of adopt Israel as its long-lost son. And then the other thing is that the Israeli lobby inside the United States is incredibly powerful, and it exerts a lot of influence over U.S. politicians at the micro and macro level. So you end up having the U.S. having to react to what Israel's doing on the ground. Israel says, no, we're not going to do this. We're not going to take your advice. And the U.S. has to react.
But that's the thing, is that even with your explanation, and I follow what you just said, the U.S. seems to be following Israel in what the U.S. considers mistakes. I was bringing this up with you earlier, right? Blinken said, today's Tuesday, so Blinken said 2 days ago, pull out of Gaza. This is a mistake. You're going to end up with an enduring insurgency. And they're not doing it. They're committed to the war. And the U.S. is also signaling, well, they haven't crossed our red lines.
Right. And I want to be clear. I'm not saying that this is rational or logical or that I agree with it. I'm just saying this is the U.S. strategic calculation. I actually happen to think that it makes no sense for the U.S. to do for the U.S. to be doing what it's doing. I think this has undermined the U.S. There's nothing about what's happening in Gaza that ends up helping U.S. interests in the region. And now it's even hurting the U.S. domestically. We have these protests. You have Biden effectively committing political suicide. I don't think there's any way at this point, barring something unforeseen, something cataclysmic happening over the next few months, I don't see any way forward for him in the November election against Donald Trump. He's losing in 6 of the 7 swing states. The opinion polling data are quite damning. You have young people all over the country protesting. And the reason he's going to lose this election, I think, is because of how he's handled Gaza.
Mohammed al-Masri, that's okay. I'm going to let that hang there. That's really interesting. It's something that's going to warrant another conversation, but we will get a chance to have that conversation. Thank you very much, Mohammed al-Masri.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.